Parents of Reddit, what is something your child has done that you can never forgive them for? This is my second one. My grandmother gave me her coin collection before she died. Every silver dollar, half, quarter, dime, nickel and penny form every year since 1885. Also, most mints as well. Every silver certificate, every bill, everything except 50s and 100s. This was her masterpiece and her pride and joy. My stepson took the entire collection and spent it at face value. Took it from a safe box that I never opened. I only found out it was him because I went through his room, and when I picked up his shorts, he obviously had a ton of coins in the pocket. Reached in, pocket was full of just pennies. At closer look, of course they were steel pennies, wheat pennies, etc. My grandmother never forgave my aunt for faking a miscarriage for attention after my mother revealed she was pregnant with me. Both my aunt and mother are mentally unstable. My grandmother told me this about a month before she died. She also said I was the daughter she never had and to never trust either of them. Before then she had never spoken an unkind word about anyone that I can remember, so needless to say it has stuck with me and I'm now estranged from my family. I have an old friend who pulled crap like this for a long time. She faked a miscarriage and then married a guy she wasn't really into because she just wanted to have a wedding. I've never really gotten into it with her about it, but I wonder if she's ever really given much consideration to how badly she's hurt people with these stunts. This story is kinda the opposite of the question. My mother forgave me for something I never thought she would. This was a few years ago. I had lost my job and was going broke quickly. I needed money for rent and bills, and I really had nowhere to turn. One day I just panicked and committed an armed robbery to get a few bucks. I figured that if I wasn't caught immediately, I would get away with it. 5 days later the police are at my door. They take me to the station and charge me with robbery. I deny everything, but all I could think of was that the next few years would be in prison. I had only spent 5 days in jail previously for a DUI to this event. When they booked me finally they told me I could make one phone call. The only number I knew was my mother's. It's been the same since I was a kid. I turned the call down. I was too embarrassed. A few days later I had to go to medical for a physical. The nurse asks if anyone knows I'm in jail. I don't know why I told her, but I mentioned that I chickened out of calling my mom. She points to a phone in the office and tells her I can call her now. I just remember the phone ringing and hoping to God she wasn't home. But she was. I expected her to disown me, but she just seemed more concerned about my safety and if I needed anything. She said she would be proud of me no matter what I did. The next day the jail tells me I have a visitor. I walk in and there is my mom. She starts crying and just smiles. She tells me that she's happy to see me and that she put $100 on my books so I can buy some supplies because she knows no one else would do it for me. My mother visited me once a month for 2 years. I received cards weekly, and even when I told her to stop sending money I would get a random $50. I guess the point is she never gave up on me. My mother and I talk all the time, more than before. I still get cards about once a month with a note inside reminding me how proud she is of me. Dude, made me cry. I love your mom. I used to work in forensic psychiatry with adults who had been declared not criminally responsible for a crime. Many of them had murdered someone, often a family member. Not all of their parents visited, but a surprisingly high number did. When you murder your stepfather and your mom still visits you in hospital, that says to me that parents will forgive dang near anything. To be fair, it's probably easier to stomach their kid killing someone because they're nuts as opposed to doing it in cold blood. My sister escaped a controlling abusive marriage when I was 12. She had nothing but her 6-month-old son when she moved back into my parents' home. I spent the next 15 years very active in raising that child, was basically another parent. When he was a teenager, he helped his father blindside my sister with a lawsuit suing for custody. Her ex tried this every other year or so, just to haul her into court and force her to have to deal with him, but they never went anywhere before this. He was old enough that his wishes would be considered and she didn't have the dollar sign to fight. Keep in mind that my nephew had never made any mention of wanting to live with his dad. So, that little crap sat in court and spewed out the most hurtful lies about my sister. She was a single mom and had her share of problems, but she worked her butt off and the whole family chipped in to make sure his life was the best we could all provide. After hearing that kid tell a judge about my sister parading men through the house and leaving him alone for days while she was out whoring, I saw my sister completely give up on her son. Now he's in his 20s and lives in his dad's basement. I understand that he is another victim of his father's psycho control, but when he said those things about my sister and I saw her heart break like that, I was done too. This crap makes me so sad. For your sister and your family, I want to cook you guys dinner. When I was a kid, I was playing outside and took a rock from the driveway and carved "I love you mom" in huge letters across the side of my mom's brand new Camaro. She cried to her dad because she didn't know what she should do. How could she punish me for saying I love her? My mom usually explodes when she wants to, but this one time she had to keep it all in. She still says she wants to beat my butt because of that. Finally one that I can laugh about. The rest of these are killing me. I'm not a parent, but I know my mom will never forgive my sister. When my grandmother died, she left each one of us have a wedding set. My sister, being the oldest, chose my grandmother's, and I got my great grandmother's, which was a 2.5 CT diamond. Hers was 1 CT. Anyways, my sister brought some friends over and raided my parents' house. She collects insurance payments, so she has cash. It was hidden in my room, so they went through everything. She pawned her wedding set and stole mine, along with a ring that was my grandfather's and my tennis bracelet my father gave to my mother on their wedding day. Mom gave it to me when I got engaged. The pendant meant the world to my mom, as my grandmother used to tell stories of her mother to my mother when she was younger. My mom and grandmother were very close, and a lot of my mom's jewelry was my grandmother's. My sister laughed about it. She didn't care and still doesn't. She's also called the police on my dad for hitting her and threatening her with a gun, and also for slapping around her son. None of that being true. She's a B. She's not only a B, she's a criminal. You could have actually had her arrested for theft if you wanted. I'm really sorry you're related to such a terrible human being. I would be devastated if someone stole such sentimental items and then had the balls to laugh about it. As the child, I know she'll never forgive me for choosing my dad over her. She's diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, aka psychopath, and it became unbearable to live with her to the point where I wanted to kill myself. She knows this all, but doesn't accept it. She'd rather have a dead, loyal son than a living son that betrayed her. This just scares me. No matter how hard you try, how much you love your child, the values you try to teach them, some kids come out rotten and there is nothing you can do about it. Not a parent, but my mom told me she would never forgive me for selling a coin collection we worked on together when I was younger. I was in the middle of a drug addiction and would have sold anything for money. I feel terrible about it still. Dang. I hope you kicked your drug addiction and things are better between your mum. Well, this will be an interesting one. For the record, I am the son in question. I remember the day when I told my mother that my 17-year-old girlfriend was pregnant. Something changed in my mother, and it definitely was not for the better. I knew I had fricked up, but didn't truly understand the struggle like my mother did. You see, my mother had me when she was 17 also. She had scholarships to go to art school and potentially make something of herself. She ended up taking care of me instead. I remember my mother looking at me and saying, "You are stupid if you choose to take care of that child." We got into a fight over it. I felt that since I was the dumbass that got my girlfriend knocked up, I should be the one to take care of it. I had computer repair skills and a knack for working hard. Finding work wouldn't be that hard, would it? Fast forward a few years and I can understand just exactly what she meant. Please note, I do love my children every single day and wouldn't trade them for anything. I spent those years watching as all my friends grow further away from me. Most got distant and didn't want to talk to a guy who had 2 jobs and a kid. I was a buzzkill for most of them. I struggled and pushed through everything that I had to take care of her. I honestly wasn't sure if I was going to make it for a while. 2 jobs making minimum wage isn't enough to afford daycare and a 1-bedroom apartment here in Iowa. I feel I lost a portion of my sanity through those times. I spent most of it wondering what life would be like if I gave her up for adoption and had done what my mother suggested. Would I be happier? I would have graduated and have a job making significantly more money than I do now. I did eventually prosper, but my mother and I have never been the same. She lost custody of me when she was younger because she couldn't keep up. She was definitely proud of me when I received my degree and got a real job. It took 6 years to do what would have taken 2. I still did it though. My mother was never going to forgive me for putting myself through exactly what she went through. I proved her wrong nonetheless. Just because you are destined to fail doesn't mean you will. I have a second beautiful daughter and a wonderful girlfriend whom I plan on marrying next year. Not my child, but this is about my younger brother. He's an alcoholic and has been for the past 15 years. He's only 32. Anyways, when he drinks he's a completely different person. I'm not talking about a sloppy drunk, but more like a possessed demon, filled with absolute hate. He never finished high school and barely got his GED. Hasn't worked in the past few years. Our mom supports him financially. Car paid for, apartment paid for, spending money provided to him. Basically, she's an enabler and he's a manipulator. His drinking is so out of control. I've had to cut him out of my life. It's sad, because he has a nephew who constantly asks for him and I just have to tell my son Uncle Drunk has moved far away. My brother has never made an honest attempt at sobering up. In fact, he's full of excuses. I can't have that in my life for my family's life anymore, and for that reason I've completely cut all ties with him. I can never forgive him for putting alcohol ahead of family. Uncle Drunk. I, too, have a drunkle Richard. My best friend was disowned by his parents for coming out as transgender. I'm not a parent, but I think the only thing that would cause me to cut my kids off like that would be a serious crime like murder. Right there with you. Whatever makes you happy, do it. I'm pretty sure my mother has not forgiven my 41-year-old brother for something that happened when he was 4. Allowed 13 seconds to himself in the bathroom, he managed to park her off the toilet to snag a bottle of Flintstones vitamins from a very high shelf and quickly gobble the entire contents. The Flintstones vitamins had already become a bone of serious contention between my mom and brother. Other parents will be familiar with the Rain Man-like fixation kids can have to stuff they like, as well as their complete inability to grasp the concept of moderation. As a parent, they push you to points where you regret ever introducing them to any external stimuli in the world because you find yourself stuck in these Groundhog Day loops that eat your soul but seemingly have no impact on their spaz-savant chimp minds. So, my brother's dream of unfettered Flintstones consumption comes true, and my mom, worried for him but also kind of seething at his idiotic victory in the Flintstones battle of there can be only one eaten per day, takes him to the emergency room. My brother ended up being fine. Skip to a few days later, Child Protective Services shows up for a surprise home visit. I suppose to determine if there was some kind of Munchausen by Flintstones thing going on with my mom. The confusion and anxiety response in my mom quickly transitioned to self-righteous humiliation. My mom being martyred is as scary as when other people turn into screaming lunatics. She's someone who genuinely, if sometimes unnecessarily, self-sacrifices quite a bit for her family, especially her children. Pretty sure she willed CPS out of the house through the sheer power of her mom guilt mind bullets. I still sometimes egg her on to tell the story just cause of how worked up she gets at my brother. Lord, how he pestered me about those Flintstone vitamins. Every day with those dagum Flintstone vitamins. And to a lesser extent the CPS folks with the haughty tone and questioning eyebrows. A Highlander reference and Munchausen by Flintstones. That was great. My eldest stepson, then 15 years old, stole my car in the middle of the night while drunk and took his friends joyriding. They wrote the car off. I have no idea how they managed it and dumped it before running off. My eldest was spotted and the police caught him. They brought him home to us at 0630 on the morning of my birthday to give us the news. I found the car in the middle of a housing estate with several dents and scrapes on the bodywork. No brakes left, no clutch, half the gearbox casing missing and 2 flat tires. The engine still ran, but only just. Volkswagen. Luckily, no one was injured during this night of madness. I had just finished paying the loan for the car. It took 4 years of hard work to do that. I threw him out. This was the final straw in a long list of wild behavior over the previous 3 years. I couldn't take any more. His mother didn't agree with my handling of the situation and a year later we split up over it. I won't be going down that road again. I'm not a parent, but I did something that my mother will never forgive me for. Before I begin, you need to know some information about my mom. My mom is Catholic. She's been going to church every Sunday since she was 5. She believes that a man and a woman shouldn't have sex until after marriage. Me and my high school girlfriend were hanging out after school at my house as usual. Things started getting hot and heavy and we started making out. Clothes were coming off and at the time I finally thought I was going to lose my virginity. I had been with this girl for 3 years and I had never gotten a BJ or had sex with her. I had seen her naked and fondled her breasts, but that's as far as we had gone. Mid-makeout my girlfriend just stops and asks me if I wanted a BJ. Obviously I said yes. I was finally getting my dong sucked and it felt great. I was loving every moment of it until my mom walked in. Instead of knocking on my room door like she usually did before entering, she just opened the door. I don't know what a mother's reaction should be in this type of situation, but she started yelling at my girlfriend. When I say yelling, I mean I heard her say words that I never heard her say before. She called my girlfriend a W and said that God would dang us both to heck for our act of sin. My girlfriend at this point is in tears and she's scrambling to get on her clothes and pretty sure she left my house without her bra because she was in such a panic. My mom didn't speak to me for a month after that. She didn't ask me how my day was at school. She didn't speak to me during dinner and she didn't even ask me to go to church on Sunday with her anymore. She used to go every Sunday but I always said no. That's the angriest I have ever seen my mom and we have never spoken about it. When she finally did talk to me, she said if I wanted her to ever speak with me again that I had to go to confession and confess my sins. I told her I would go, but I ended up going to a Denny's and ordering their lumberjack Grand Slam instead. She thinks I went to confession though. Also, every time my girlfriend came over after the incident, my mom would leave the house. I don't know where she went, but she couldn't be in the same vicinity as her. Worst part of it all was my girlfriend didn't attempt to give me another BJ for a year because she was so scared of my mother walking in on us. TLDR. My mom walked in on my girlfriend giving me my first BJ, told me that I was going to heck for my sins, and we have never spoken about it since. This one's about my sister, not my kid, but it's something that I'm not sure my mother's ever forgiven her for. My sister was never the perfect daughter. She generally did poorly in school, got into fights, joined a gang, a pretty tame one, though, and did some soft drugs, mostly weed and X. She's snuck boyfriends over to the house and had sex with them in my room, as well as my brother's room. She's stolen money from my younger brother, 9 years difference between my sister and brother, and run away from home. Despite all that, I still love her. But the one thing I can never forgive her for is when she abandoned her daughter. She and her husband had just split up, and were in the middle of a divorce. She was cheating on him with a kid from another state. Seriously, the guy was a kid. Something like a 12-year difference between him and her. Her husband found out and hit her. Pretty nasty stuff all around. My sister moved into my parents' place with her daughter. A couple weeks later, my sister and my mom get into a major fight, and my sister storms out and drives to her boyfriend's place. While she's packing her bags, my niece is grabbing at her, screaming, "Don't leave me, mommy," crying and apologizing, begging her not to go, begging her not to leave her alone. My niece keeps crying, "I love you, mommy, I want to stay with you." My sister shakes her off and just leaves. Eventually, she came back in order to get partial custody, but those cries will haunt me forever. Even if both my parents and her daughter have forgiven her, I never will. Son took my 74 mint condition Stratocaster, and by mint, I mean not a single solitary flaw, apart while experimenting with LSD and lost most of the pieces. I found it months after he did it. Mind you, I didn't check up on him much because he was a straight A student who did everything he was ever told, never spoke back, never really did anything wrong. Had no idea he was getting high or experimenting with anything. Found the guitar wrapped in a blanket under his bed. Everything was missing except the neck and the body. I cried. My first nice guitar. I quit playing it 20 years ago because it was actually going up in value. I didn't speak to him for a month. He was 16. I felt so violated and couldn't do anything about it. He had no clue where the parts were. On the bright side, the body and neck are the most valuable parts of that guitar. The rest of the hardware can be replaced. I wouldn't be too concerned about its value though. 70s Strats aren't worth much more than brand new made in America Strats. After reading some of these responses, my answer seems so trivial, but will share it anyway. I won't forgive my daughter for not wearing her retainer after her braces came off. She had beautiful teeth afterwards, but over time they have shifted. I can see that. Orthodontics are stupid expensive. Kids don't understand the importance until they are older either. My daughter turned 14 this year, got her license and all. She wanted a car real bad, of course, and I wasn't going to get one, but we just happened to stumble on a decent vehicle for a ridiculous price. Heck, just buying the thing for an extra vehicle was a no-brainer. We planned on giving it to her for Christmas this year. Big bow, all that jazz. However, she's been a snoopy crat lately and one day decides to go through the mail, finds the title the owner mailed us, and receipt for storage. Yes, I am getting a car. That was a month ago. Still pee off. I'm not mad that she found out about whatever Christmas present she was getting. I'm mad cause this is just one of those landmark gifts. I was getting really excited about seeing the look on her face. Pictures. All that. Might sound stupid, but that was going to be my Christmas present to myself. In a way, she ruined my Christmas morning 2 months ahead of schedule. Not my child, but my aunt. So from my grandparents' perspective, it's their child. My grandfather had brought back some spoils of war from Japan at the end of World War II. He was stationed there right around the surrender. He got hold of a flag and some samurai swords and a few other smaller items. They were likely worth a good amount now, but they were more sentimental in value to my grandfather, uncle and mother. My aunt, in her 30s at the time, split up with her latest boyfriend and moved in with my grandparents with her small children because she was too lazy to work. Shortly after that, all of the stuff disappeared. She never admitted to taking them, but seeing as there were lots of other valuables, it's unlikely that someone broke in or anything. She was the only one that would have had access to them during that time, so she's the only one who could have taken them. It's possible she had a guest that took them, but still she's responsible even then. It would have been hard for someone to take something like swords in the wall mount without noticing. My grandparents never forgave her until the day they died. I don't think my mom will ever forgive me for getting married and keeping it a secret from my entire family for 9 months. No, I wasn't pregnant. Just a coincidence. Holy dang. I have Asian parents. I would be booted from the family if I did this. My mother always forgave my sister. My mom passed away in June, and after some more shenanigans my sister is finally cut out of the family for good. Some of the things she did: told administrators at her school that my parents forced her to smoke pot. On another occasion told her school administrators that my parents locked her in the closet and wouldn't feed her. Ran away from home at 17 and told the person she was living with that my mom and dad abused her in some awful ways. When my mom went to go talk to her after finding out where she was, the person she lived with took a knife to my mom's throat and threatened her life trying to protect my sister. Came back. Ran away from home again to live next door with a creepy older guy and her girlfriend and do drugs openly to pee off my family. Stole $2,500 from my grandma and $3,000 from my great aunt. My mom got sick, cancer, and my sister and her new girlfriend came to live with my parents. My parents couldn't make bills and my mom needed someone to take care of her during the day, so it worked out with my sister and girlfriend paying 1/3 of bills and my parents paying 2/3. My mother passed away and then my sister stole my mom's wedding ring that was left to me to have when I married. Took a bat and destroyed all of my dad's things. Didn't pay their part of the bills. Took my dad's money that he paid them to take care of the bills. Stole $500 out of my dad's bank account. Created an AT&T account in my mom's name post-mortem and never paid for it. Left my dad in the lurch and moved away. And the real kicker that finally broke the camel's back was, had my dad arrested for indecency with a child. got my 11-year-old nephew to exaggerate saying that my dad exposed himself to him, when in reality my nephew is weird and likes to try to burst in on people and see them naked so he can say I saw you naked, hahaha. The charges were dropped last month. I only hate one person, well two, my sister and her girlfriend, and I will never ever forgive them. This stuff is so scary for me to read. I feel like I was extremely close to turning out like some of the kids mentioned. If my parents didn't raise me as delicately as they did during a phase when I was extremely narcissistic and had not yet developed empathy, I have no doubt that I would have done some terrible things. Strangely enough, because of how much I despise the way I was before, I feel like I have become even more conscious of others' feelings than many of the people around me. I also can't help but feel some of the kids in this thread could have turned into some really kind people if not for some unfortunate environmental factors. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.